When we drive down the road in our truck or car, it's a safe feeling. You're protected from the elements, protected from other cars. But what happens when that safety and security is invaded by some stranger, some madman or madwoman who flies off the handle and threatens your very safety? Tonight's video features 3 true, scary road rage stories from Reddit Let's Not Meet. So next time somebody flips you off or gives you a dirty or mean look, maybe just let it go. Just this one time. Because who knows, maybe that other person has a gun or a knife with ill intentions. So be safe out there, guys. Let's begin. Number 1. So about a month ago, my father was in the hospital for his blood pressure. He's a diabetic, as well as what he has now been diagnosed with, CGH. Well, he's okay for those wondering, and he was just there because the docs were changing his meds and keeping him on bed rest. Anyways, one of the days he's there, my sister and I, along with my 8-month-old, decide to go visit him because he's mad they won't discharge him. So we are on our way there at about 7:30. Not late, but it wasn't light out. We were driving 45 and a 40, when in my rearview mirror I noticed a black Mercedes weaving through traffic at what I'll assume was probably anywhere from 60 to 65. When he goes to pass my car, the car in the lane beside me decides that as soon as the Mercedes is close enough to brake check him, which prompts Mercedes guy, without even stepping on the brake or reacting to being brake checked at all, to swerve back onto my lane, clipping my passenger side just enough to scratch and make me swerve a little to the side to avoid him hitting us further. So as Mama Bear, and also since my sister was scared, I got a little angry, and as we approached an intersection where he was turning right, I honked, and when he looked back I was flipping him off. We went our separate ways and I continued straight. About 6 miles past the intersection, where we parted, my sister and I are singing to the radio, when out of the corner of my eye I can see a black car driving neck and neck with me. So without looking, I laugh and ask my sister, how funny would it be if it was Mercedes guy? She laughed a little and turned her head. When her laugh stopped, I looked over at her. When she looks back at me with wide eyes, it's Mercedes guy. I look over and sure enough, there he is. His face just full of hate and anger as he's shouting at us and flipping us off, swerving closer to our car without hitting us. My sister at this point is near tears, but he backs off and is behind us, so in my mind I'm like, okay, he said his piece, we're done. We continue on. We're still about 10 minutes from the hospital, and I'm watching in my rear view as this Mercedes is following us, turn for turn, and lane for lane change. The anger still visible from a distance, as streetlights show light into his car. My sister's freaking out because she said she had seen him fumbling in his back seat and placing what looked like a crowbar on his passenger seat. Now he's riding our bumper, flashing his brights into our car and revving his engine at us, and we're about a block away from the hospital, which by the way is a VA hospital, as my dad is a former Marine, and I pull into the lot, but I'm driving around hoping and praying for someone to be in the parking lot, because besides getting my own bat out of my trunk, what am I going to do? He's easily got about 100 pounds on me, and I'm with child and my sister. Eventually I can see security about to enter a building, so I ask my sister very calmly, since she's about to have an asthma attack, to unbuckle the baby, and when I pulled up to the building to jump out and run up to security. So she does, and I continue to drive because as I slowed down, I saw Mercedes flip his car and park, start to get out. And once I kept going, he got back in. My sister texts me to circle around, and I do, running the stop signs in the parking lot, because at this point I'm freaking out. And as soon as I round the corner, there's 2 police cars with 4 officers standing outside watching us turn. My sister sitting with the baby in the back seat. As soon as Mercedes guy sees the cops, he peels out. The police take my statement. But ultimately, since I didn't have a plate number and the VA didn't have working security cameras, nothing came of this event. So Mercedes guy, let's not meet. Number 2. I've been hooked on this sub since I came across it a few weeks ago. I finally had the time to post my story here. It's probably not as crazy as others, but still pretty scary. Backstory. I was a senior in high school in 2014, and I am female. I had just turned 17 3 months prior, due to starting my kindergarten early because of my birthday, and the state I lived in at the time. Point is, I was young. My dad had just unexpectedly passed away a week before this incident. This Friday was my first day back at school, and yes, my mother made me come back to school less than a week after I found my dad dead of a heart attack. So I totally wasn't ready for it, more like forced to act normal. I do think this played a big part in my reaction. I went to Votech. For those who don't know, I had half of my day devoted to a specific trade, cutting my actual time in high school classes in half. After lunch, all the tech students would get on the buses to drive to tech. I was one of the few who were allowed to drive to tech because I had a job that sometimes started at the end of my school day and was allowed to leave early to go to work. Now for the story. It's a semi-normal day, even though I just went through the most traumatic event of my life a week ago. Teachers were sent an email of what had happened with my dad. Fellow students ended up finding out. Everywhere I went in school, I was asked why I was even there. Was I okay? Do I need to go home? Blah, blah, blah. I was pretty much emotionless after spending a whole week crying my eyes out. I was just over it and wanted to get through the day. After lunch, I get in my car to head to tech. I enjoyed tech a lot. I was actually looking forward to it. Now, tech is less than 15 minutes away from my high school. Not a long trip at all. I'm down the road and someone in front of me stops to turn, and I notice a car behind me, an older Ford Taurus, swaying something out of the driver's window. He's an old man all alone. I assume he was just waving something with the music and pay no mind. A little further down the road, someone else in front of me stops to turn. We're at a dead stop waiting for the other lane to clear, so guy ahead can cross. I had my window down, as it was a pretty nice day. I then noticed the guy behind me was staring at me through my rear view window, pointing previous object at me, lunging it, and yelling out the window at me. "You moron! Don't you know how to drive?" I'm instantly like, okay, this is weird. I'm just waiting for this guy to turn. I know that I didn't do any stupid driving previously. I was thinking, what the heck? And I roll my windows up. My school is less than 3 minutes away at this point. I'm still being a little paranoid and looking in my rearview mirror at this guy heading down the road. I then see him take the object that I still can't see well enough to figure out what is, and he took it across his throat as if he was slicing it, and then pointing it at me. He was also accelerating, riding my rear end, then backing off. My heart starts racing because I know this guy isn't joking at this point. I figured that once I turned into tech, he would keep on driving. Just a crazy case of road rage. I'm still scared though. I turned into tech and pull forward into a spot. The guy whips in and parks directly behind me. I notice some other students in their car beside me getting their books together, and I signal to them to stay in their car. I mouth to them that I don't know what's going on and to lock their doors. Crazy old guy then comes up to my window with a knife. That's what he was waving out the window this whole time at me. A huge Swiss Army knife. I have no idea how I didn't notice that it was a knife. His face was so close to my window. His eyes were squinted and bloodshot. He had curly white hair with glasses. He's about 70 years old, but a pretty bulky guy. He truly looked scary and pissed. He told me to open my door and started trying to open it when I shook my head no. He then takes the knife and scratches a big X on my window, right where my face would be. Then he pressed his hands against my window, pulled my window down a few inches. I had a Jeep with some really crappy window motors. I'm really freaking out now. The window was open only 2 to 3 inches due to my rain guards, but I was still scared. I took my seatbelt off and started backing away from the window, but didn't want to get out of my seat so this guy could chase me around the inside of my car. He then sticks a knife in my window, inches from my face. I can't roll the window back up. He's screaming how I'm a stupid idiot that needs to know my place and other crazy deranged things like this. I'm truly scared now. and still backing away as far as I can in my seat from the knife. But in a way, after what I just went through, I started to just not care. In my mind, he wanted a reaction, and I wasn't giving him one. I eventually just started saying, "Do it. Do it. Come get me. Is that what you want?" With the straightest, most unemotional face I could muster up. At this point, he's getting confused. He's still wielding this knife at me, but it's only 5 to 6 inches away from my face. He can't get his arm in my window any farther. He's still shouting at me. Now he's going to kill me and make me pay. I stare at him for a while with no reaction to what he's saying. I think he realized that whatever he wanted to happen wasn't going to happen. He took his arm out of my window saying he'll find me, and he's still going to kill me. He walks back to his car and speeds off, hitting a student's car in the process. It took me a few seconds to come back to reality. The girl in the car beside me looked at me like, "What the hell?" All the students that arrived when I did stayed in their cars when they realized what was happening. I got out of my car and so did everyone else. The students rushed over to me apologizing, saying they were too scared to do anything when they saw he had a knife. I didn't blame them, really. That's what I wanted them to do. While this was happening, one of them phoned Tech's principal to tell him what was going on. Tech called the police and took my statement. The cops kept asking me if I cut this guy off, brake checked him. Did I know him? I said no, I didn't do anything to him, and I've never seen him before. Tech had no cameras. I do realize that maybe my reaction was bad. I've had people tell me that I should have put my Jeep in drive and ran him over, or just left the school completely. I think after what I had just went through with my dad, I didn't want to see any more death. Even though this guy actually did something to me, I didn't want him to target other students if I left. I also was not allowed to have a weapon myself being on school grounds. Not even a can of mace. Tech ended up letting me go home. A few news outlets wanted to interview me, but I just had enough. They still did run a story without me that night. 2 days passed. It's now Sunday. The cops called me and say the guy has turned himself in because he saw the story on the news. It turns out that he was a Vietnam veteran, and when the police went to his house, he had a shrine for the war, a whole room of stuff. We go to court. They say that because he's a vet and he had a flashback and was temporarily delusional, he has to complete an ARD program, stay 599 feet away from me at all times, and pay for my scratched window. I'm pretty upset by the verdict. I do respect veterans to every extent, but you can't be on the road if you're doing stuff like this to innocent people. I still do see him around at the store and gas station. I'm not sure if he remembers me or not. Every time he looks at me, but not like he knows me, just how you glance at any other person. I do feel bad for him. He didn't deserve what that war did to him, but I also didn't deserve what he did to me. I hope one day he overcomes the trauma like I have. It's made me a paranoid driver that checks the rearview mirror a little too often, and I get scared when someone follows me for too long. I now have a concealed carry permit with a gun, knife, and mace in my car at all times. I'm overcoming it. Thanks for reading. Update. I've got some messages saying that this is fake and that I made it up. Well, here's a news story for those interested. I decided to post because my name isn't visible, because I was underage at the time, and I have since moved on from here. The link to this article is in the description below. Number 3. I've seen a lot of road rage stories here lately, so I thought I'd share my own. This happened to me last summer. I was home from school and on my way to the local supermarket to pick up a few things. I have to drive into the city from my rural home. There are a couple of major intersections to get through before I can get to the supermarket. I was on my phone at the time. It's still legal in my state, but talking on the phone has never stopped me from being a careful driver. I pulled up to the last intersection. I was in a right turn lane and the light was red. Usually when there's a red light, I'm planning on turning. I wait until I'm absolutely certain it's clear for me to go. Sometimes I'm even a little too cautious about this, likely to the annoyance of people waiting behind me. I see that no one is moving in the intersection, and the lane I intend to turn in is clear, so I decide to go. After I've turned, a car turns in a little behind me and is honking at me. I ignore him because I have no idea what his problem is. I'm going the speed limit, and he can pass me in another lane if he wants. I'm nearly to the right turn lane to enter the supermarket's parking lot. The man zips his car around me and cuts me off, parking right in front of me on a busy road. The man exits the car. He's a young man, probably no older than 30. He walks into the other lane where cars are speeding around him and honking, and goes up to my driver's side window. He starts screaming at me to roll my window down. Get out of the car. Give him my phone so he can break it, so I can't drive while talking on it anymore. His boyfriend or husband is yelling at him to get back in the car. He was trying to claim I cut him off. I started getting scared by how angry and violent he was seeming to get. Luckily, I saw that there was enough room to slip my car around him and turn into the turn lane, so I did it so quickly that I barely remember doing it. He tried to follow me, but I lost him by zigzagging around the parking lot and leaving the place quickly. My boyfriend was on the phone and he didn't hear a word of it. He just thought I was not paying attention to his talking and was ignoring him. I explained what happened. He says he thinks the guy was having a bad day and probably wouldn't have done it if the other driver was a large man, not a small female. I'm not sure if that's the case, but he was trying to intimidate me. I've been thinking about whether or not I cut him off. I don't believe I did. This was a major four-way intersection with more than 6 lanes in each direction. From his point of view, he would have been turning left. There were no moving cars when I made my right turn, and had their light turned green at the exact same moment I turned, he still would have had a long way to travel before reaching his new lane where I was. There also would have been other cars turning left that would have entered the lane next to me, and there were none when I completed my turn, meaning that the left turn arrow turned green after I had already started moving. Sorry if this was confusing. It's hard to explain the intersection. Regardless of whether or not I truly cut this guy off, his reaction was unnecessary and dangerous. Nearly caused the people behind me to rear-end me, and got in the way of moving traffic to threaten someone half his size. I hope this guy gets some help for his obvious anger issues, and I hope he never tries something this crazy again. He's incredibly lucky that all the people around us, and myself, were vigilant drivers, or many accidents could have occurred that day. I hope I never see this guy again, and I hope he doesn't go after anyone else. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all made it to the very end. Please make sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Sinful Society if you haven't already. 10,000 subscribers is vastly approaching us. I want to thank you guys all for making this possible. Stay safe and stay sinful.